Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to video 6. Wow, all the way up to 6 on our unit on personal finance and budgets. And yeah, we are more than halfway through now. This is number 6 out of 8. And today's lesson, we're going to be looking at debt and what some view about debt, right? Now, this is one person's perspective, okay? And there are other ideas about debt, which you will be presented with as you continue to go throughout your life, all right? And there's some things to be aware of, so on and so forth, all right? So we're going to look at the brief history of debt in the United States, very brief, just a brief overview, and then some other things that might help you control your overall use of debt, so on and so forth. And it's important to understand that when you have debt, that means you owe somebody something, right? When somebody says, I'm indebted to you, you owe it to them, right? Or that person says that they owe you something when they say, I'm indebted to you, right? So there's a lot of history about debt, but we're going to look at that, here shortly, right? Now, one of the things that led to, and there was many elements that went into this chaos that went to the crisis, the economic crisis of 2008, right? And debt was one of them, because what had been propagated was that it's okay to just spend, right, without recourse, okay? Just max yourself out on your budget, and as long as you're making payments and you can make those payments, things are good, right? Well, that came to bite lenders in the tuchus, okay? And actually more than just lenders, because it bought the people in the tuchus as well. So here's the problem. People were lending on what they called variable interest rates, all right? Variable means that they can change at any moment based off of the current rates in the market, right? So they were paying rates. Remember, rates are what you pay for use to borrow money, right? And those rates were a certain low factor for a long period of time. Then they started creeping up and creeping up and creeping up, right? To the point where people can no longer pay their mortgage payments, right? Where people can no longer get the financing they needed, and so on and so forth. They weren't able to meet their regular obligations. They had borrowed too much money, and so on and so forth. And a lot of the banks suffered from that, right? And there were some other practices that were going on as well, but that's just a brief history, right? So let's look at what things actually mean. All right, so in 1913, all right, there was the Federal Reserve System, okay? And the value of the dollar up to this point had been based off of gold, okay? It was the gold standard, all right? So what had happened is that, and when I say the gold standard, here's what I mean. That means the amount of gold that the government had available to them, which was the standard at the time, right? Because people recognize that gold is something that's precious, something that held value, silver and other things, okay? Every dollar was backed by the gold standard, okay? That means, okay, he had so much in gold, and we could say that was the worth or the value of the dollar because that's how much government had available to them. And then some individuals had access, but that wasn't as much as the government had, okay? And so, and the government would actually purchase gold from individuals and so on and so forth, okay? Well, the Federal Reserve System was established in 1913, and they're the ones that held the reserve of gold. They print the money, okay, and then they said, okay, this dollar is worth X amount, of gold, and became the dollar standard, and so on and so forth, okay? So it used to be that, again, the dollar was based off of how much gold there was in the system, okay? That's the key point. All right. Then in 1933, we hit the Great Depression, okay? There was the Great Fall, and we went into the Great Depression, which means that a lot of people were unemployed, not working, and the price of and the value of gold started to go crazy, right? And we started using debt as a way to say, okay, we're going to borrow money from others, and people are going to borrow from us a little bit so that we can gain those interest rates and pay the yields and all that or get the yields, and we'll pay a little bit of rates, so on and so forth, right? So they started borrowing money, right? And then in 1971, the U.S. was borrowing so much money that we could no longer base the U.S. dollar off of gold, right? And President Nixon completely removed the idea that, U.S. dollar was based off of gold, and it then became how much money the U.S. dollar was worth based off of how much money the United States was owed, how much we lent out and was borrowed back to us and we would be repaid back to us, right? How much we would get off of yield, okay? Which was, yeah, there's various ways to think about that, all right? Everybody has their own opinion on that idea, right? Now, today, and again, we are still on the debt standard today. All right, that means that one of the reasons why inflation is occurring such a frequent rate is because of debts, countries' ability to pay us money that we pay somebody else, and we're hoping to get paid back for that at a certain price. Money that the U.S. lets borrow from banks, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's what created the U.S. standard. So basically, we're letting people borrow money, right, and then it's coming back to us. All right. Then on top of that, right, we're not meeting our budgets, right? And there's other debt things to consider as well. And just if I can start talking about that economically, your mind would just go poof, right? So just basically understand that we are currently in the debt standard and the dollar is not based off of gold, right? So today in marketing, okay, and in our personal spending, okay, we have, and marketers, I say marketers have done a really good job at making people accept debt, all right? And there's several reasons for that, and we'll look at more of the history here shortly, right? Some people say that people like the debt because, it's part of an exclusive club. Believe it or not, there is a program in a business out there called the Lending Club, right? So it makes you feel like you're a part of something, right? Isn't that why people, like the idea of belonging to things? So they like clubs and, other organizations, right? It's a social need, okay? They like the idea of, oh, you've done such a good job with your finances that you've been accepted, right? And they use those terms, oh, the bank has accepted you, right? Well, what are they really accepted? That's something to think about, right? They've accepted that you're going to pay us money, right? Indirectly, it has people begging and pleading for loans. Oh, man, I hope the bank approves me. I really need this new car, right? Oh, man, I hope the credit card company approves me because I really want to buy this new refrigerator, this new TV, or this new PlayStation. Is that a good way to look at it? All right. And then here's the other thing, too. There is a lot of pressure socially to live better today at the same time period in the same age range than your parents did, or maybe your grandparents did, right? So maybe by the time you hit 21, you can have that new car. Maybe your parents didn't have a new car by that point. Maybe they did. Maybe their grandparents didn't. Who knows, right? Maybe there's a new home purchase to consider, right? Or having all this new stuff that could be yours. You're just making payments on it, right? That could be a bad thing, all right? So here we go to the next slide here. All right. There was a guy that said buying on credit is folly, which means buying on credit is a silly, foolish mistake, all right? And that person was Sears, all right? And he created the Sears Catalog. Now, Sears has gone out of business within the last several years, okay? But the Sears Catalog was something that people was shipped out, and people could buy things that they weren't able to buy before. It was like the new supermarket, if you will. This is long before Walmart existed. This is long before the supermarket existed, okay? So people would go and buy into stores, and they would see a catalog, and they could order things and buy things through the catalog. The order would be shipped in, and that would be sent to that place or that store, and they can get it, right? Now, Mr. Sears did not allow use of debt. He didn't let people borrow money, right? In fact, why do they call J.C. Penney? Well, they did that because it was James Cash Penney. He did not like the use of debt. He didn't allow credit cards and credit at his store. Okay, so pretty simple there, right? So it's a new thing. Okay, it's an unheard of concept up until the early 1900s. All right. Now, Ford, the big company, Ford Motor Company, didn't provide financing until 10 years after his competitors did. There was no Ford Bank, so General Motors, Dodge Brothers, and the other companies did it before he did. Okay. Then there became Ford Finance, right? And really, the credit revolution started happening, can be paced back to the 1950s. Okay. And in the 1950s, there was something called the Diners Club, all right? Now, again, I'm just giving you a history here of credit cards and use of debt, right? Well, the Diners Club, what that was a program that was launched in New York City, and then people would present a card with the numbers, a certain set of numbers on it, a membership number, right? And what they could do is they could say, okay, put it on my bill, okay? And they would go out and eat these fine restaurants, and then at one time they would get a bill for all the restaurants, okay, and then they would pay that bill, okay. It's called the Diners Club, right? It gave away like a single payment system for exclusive restaurants, okay, really nice high-end restaurants, because maybe the rich people were just like, yeah, just send me once a month, that sounds really good, right? It was a convenience to their customers, all right? It was a way for that, instead of having to pay each time or what have you, it was just a convenience. You just go in, sign a bill, you'd be billed for it later, go about your day, right? Well, sounds nice, right? All right, so then in 1958, about 8 years later, all right, the Bank of America's Bank AmeriCard came out, and it was sent to 60,000 customers, all right? And that's crazy, right? The AmeriCard was a way to let people use debt. Okay, buy it now, pay for later, right? And then, believe it or not, the Bank of America's Bank AmeriCard would later become a Visa in 1976. So that's where Visa came from, all right? So the Bank of America AmeriCard, right? And then American Express had the idea of marketing themselves as saying, help customers make easy payments on something, all right? So that was the start of American Express credit card company, right? Now, here's the thing, right? In 1970, only 15% of eligible Americans had credit card. Just 15%. Okay, that's not a lot. All right. Then, fast forward to 1986, Discover Card. Discover, you've seen those commercials. You know who they are, right? Was formed by the Sears company. Remember, Mr. Sears did not like the idea of use of debt. But later on, he established the Sears Credit Company, which would later be sold off and turned into Discover, okay, as an independent company. All right, so there you go. It was after a little dispute they had with Visa and the Bank of America system, okay. And then by 2008, okay, 77% of Americans had cards or were actively using credit cards. Think about that. In the course of about less than 40 years, went from 15% use of credit cards to 77% use, right? So it's a fairly new thing. All right? It's not been around for a long time. All right? Now, here's a couple things to keep in mind about debt. All right? One, people do not become rich when they finance. Okay? Great fortunes were not built on easy financing. The people who got rich on that were the people who were offering the financing and getting paid for use of debt. All right? All right. Here's another thing that you need to think about. Well, if I let somebody and a personal friend or relative borrow money, if I make a loan for them, right? I'm helping them, right? Well, are you? What happens when your friend can't pay? Okay? Don't you have a strained relationship? All right. You see, here's the idea, right? That if somebody lets somebody borrow money, they're the lender, and they have power over the borrower. Okay. They have power over the borrower, right? Example, if you decide to finance a car and you end up losing your job, okay, and you're still making payments on that car, well, one of your priorities needs to be paying that car off, right? Paying those bills. What happens in the event that you can't make those payments anymore? Do you think the bank's just going to give you that car? They're going to come and take it. Then what are you going to do, right? Whereas if you own the car, could they come and take it? No, because you don't owe them anything, right? There's no reason to, right? We talked about this before briefly, right? About like the rent-to-own furniture stores and 90 days same as cash, right? But a lot of the cash advance stores that'll say, okay, borrow money until payday. The rent-to-own stores, right? Oh, buy this PlayStation for $100 a month for 12 months and it can be yours, right? Title pawning. Title means sign your title over. We'll give you the money and you can't pay it back and we'll just come and get your vehicle, right? Or even lease to own businesses provide services to people that get ahead or to help people get ahead. Well, do they? Well, here's the thing, right? High penalty charges and fees, right? So yeah, not only, let's take the PlayStation, all right? I remember once working for a company that leased to own a PlayStation for $100 a month for 12 months. Let's think about that, okay? You could have gone to Walmart or Best Buy and bought a PlayStation for, say, $500, right? Okay, $500. But making 12 payments at $100 a month, that's $1,200 after all said and done. Then if you don't pay on time, guess what happens? You get charged a $10 fee or a $25 fee. Or if they have to go out and, hello, we'd like for you to pay your bill, you get charged per visit. All right, so it's easy to get lost financially. All right. All right. What about gambling? Let me see. If I play the lottery, I could be rich, and I could play the lottery, and all I have to do is just make a couple scratch-off tickets or win the lottery, and I don't have to worry about anything for the rest of my life. Right? Well, gambling does not make people rich. It's an addiction. Okay? And there's also high risk involved. Usually, when lottery does their thing, right, it usually favors the house. When you go to Vegas, all the odds usually favor the house. Yeah, but I heard about this one guy who, one guy out of how many customers? Okay? Think about it. You got to use your brains. Use those noodles. All right? So, if you let somebody borrow money, are you helping them? Are you ruining the relationship? All right? Or running the risk of ruining the relationship? Do cash advance and rent to own and title pawning places really help people get ahead? At a high cost, right? And if at all, okay? And then does gambling make people rich? Not really. And usually it's the statistical minority, right? The improbable to make it happen. All right? All right. Other myths that people believe: that car payments are a way of life. All right? That's something you have to decide. All right? If you're going to make car payments. All right? And if you make car payments, are you going to keep that vehicle for a while? And are you going to want to risk paying that additional amount per month or per year over the term? Okay? APR. Okay? So there you go. Right? So the typical millionaire, right, avoids car payments and drives reliable used vehicles. Mr. C, that's incorrect, because I saw, the rap artists, and they're driving around in Rolls Royces and Ferraris and Bentleys. Those are rented. Those are not theirs. All right? Those are not theirs in the videos. All right? Well, Mr. C, I saw that. Again, the typical millionaire avoids car payments and drives reliable used vehicles. They might be nicer vehicles, but reliable used vehicles, right? Because vehicles have a high depreciation. They start off at one price and they start trickling down as time moves forward. They do it really fast, right? And I get it. Automobiles are seen as status symbols, okay? And I get it. But usually the rich do not ask people, well, how much is it per month? They just generally ask, how much? Right? Some people say that using credit cards and paying it off every month or having a debit card has its perks, right? Well, it's easy to overspend, and I alluded to that in my last unit, right? So think about this, right? and here's the actual numbers, okay? McDonald's went from $4.75 per sale when they started. I'm going to phrase that. McDonald's used to only take cash, and the average transaction was $4.75. As soon as McDonald's opened up to taking credit cards and debit cards, the average sale went from $4.75 to $7 per sale. Okay? Think about that. Remember the envelope system? I said it's there to control your spending. Right there is proof. All right? All right, other things. Those credit card offers that I'll get when I'm 18 are going to be great and will help me establish my credit credentials and my credit history. Yep, usually they have high interest at the tune of near 24%. Mr. C, isn't that illegal? No, you could charge up to 24%. Some banks charge even higher. All right? Depends on where they're from. I'm not going to go into the history of that. But yeah, I've seen credit card interest rates as high as 30, 35%, depending on where they originate from. All right? Remember, debt is addictive, all right? But you got to remember that lender has power over the borrower. The person who's lending the money, they have the financial power and the obligation, right? Some people say that debt is a tool to create prosperity. Again, that goes back to my other statement, right? That goes back to the idea that, great fortunes were not built on easy financing, right? If you're going to prosper from the debt, it's because you're the one who's making the loans. All right? And it only works in some cases. All right? I could talk to you about businesses that have failed financially because they borrowed a lot of money and weren't able to pay it back. Right? Borrowed a lot to get the business going, had a great business plan, a great model, and it didn't work. Right? There's a lot of risk associated and a lot of cost that is to be had. All right? So there we go. That brings me to the end of this lesson. I try to keep that under 20 minutes as much as possible, and we are right at that mark. And so you should be able to answer these questions. And if you need to go back and review the information, I highly encourage you to do such. And then on the next unit, we'll be looking at, hey, how do we look for a deal, and how do we get the most out of our money when we actually start saving it and when it comes time to use it? Remember, I just said that the millionaire doesn't ask how much per month, okay? They have the mindset of asking how much, right? There you go.